And just wait for confirmation. Just wait for confirmation, Chairman.
Okay. I'm going to get confirmation.
So we're live now, Chairman.
Okay. So welcome to this meeting of the Cultural and Communities Select Committee. And this meeting is being held remotely and members are in attendance via video conferencing. The meeting is being live streamed and will also be available for repeated viewing. And I can begin by naming the members who are in attendance for the public record and asking members to confirm their attendance. And during the meeting, if a member wishes to speak, they will indicate this to me and I will call them to speak in turn. I would like to remind members that the County Council standing orders continue to apply. To please keep your microphone muted unless you have been called to speak, and that you may be visible on the screen to the public and to other members even when you're not speaking. I will now call these members in attendance. Members, please unmute and confirm your attendance for the record. Ensure that you can be heard. First of all, Councillor Chris Carter.
Thank you, Chairman. Confirm my attendance.
Councillor John Bennison.
Thank you, Chairman. I confirm my attendance.
Councillor Fred Burkett. Councillor Burkett. Not here. Councillor Jackie Branson.
Chairman, confirm my attendance.
I find it very difficult to hear people.
I don't think Councillor Branson is with us, Chairman.
Right. Councillor Anne Briggs.
Present, Chairman.
I can see you. Councillor Zelia Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. Present, thank you.
Yes. Councillor Peter Chegwin. I know he's here.
Yes, I am here. Hopefully you can hear and maybe even
Yes.
see me now, Chairman.
Councillor Rod Cooper.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Alan Dowden.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Dominic Hiscock.
Good morning, Chairman. Yes, I'm here.
Good morning. Councillor Rob McCarter.
Yes, good morning, Chairman. I'm present.
And Councillor Michael White. Councillor White.
Councillor White is not with us, Chairman, at the moment.
Okay. So we'll now move into the agenda for the meeting. First of all,
Chairman, sorry
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, Chairman. I think you missed me out, Chairman. Councillor.
yes, I did. How awful. I'm so sorry. So the Councillor
I'm here.
There.
Yeah, thank you. I'm here. Thank you.
Very nice to see you. First on the agenda is the apologies for absence. And we've had apologies from Councillor David Clark, and Councillor Alan Dowden is in attendance today as the deputy member. So are there any other apologies? So we're light on. Emma? No.
I haven't received any further apologies, Chairman, no.
Next is the declarations of interest. And if you have a disclosable pecuniary interest or a personal interest in any agenda item, please do declare this now or at the time of the item by indicating that you wish to speak. I think we all understand that. First of all, the confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. Does anyone have anything to say about, anything they wish to bring up? Or can we agree these minutes?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Confirmed, Chairman.
Confirmed. Anything else? So I can agree these as confirmed. Next is deputations, and I can confirm that we've had no deputation requests for today's meeting. Now, item 5, we come to Chairman's announcements. All the services covered by this select committee have now resumed service provision following the COVID lockdown. Many of those services have had to adapt in some way to the new regulations, and all are being delivered in a COVID secure way. Income remains down on previous years, and there are some additional costs related to COVID measures. All services are striving where possible to generate alternative service models and offers to replace those elements of service that have not been able to resume because of COVID limitations. The outdoor services remain some of the hardest hit, as school residential visits are unlikely to resume until January 2021 at the earliest. Day courses are now being offered, and the first school day visits have commenced. The public camping offer at Calshot, Tile Barn, Runways End, and the Basingstoke Canal has proved highly successful and will now be further developed for the future. The library service is now progressing its transformation process following the executive member decision in July. The opening times consultation has closed and the outcomes will be reported to this meeting. The staff consultation has started, and there are too some encouraging expressions of interest from local communities about transitioning a number of the libraries identified for closure into independent libraries, and this work continues. Meanwhile, the library service continues to innovate and is increasingly gaining very positive national attention for its work. An example of this is the Summer Reading Challenge. The Reading Agency's annual National Summer Reading Challenge is an important event in the library service's calendar, sustaining reading for pleasure and literacy levels in children aged from 4 to 11 over the summer holidays and preventing the summer reading dip. Due to the implications of COVID-19, the library service realised an urgent need to diversify this major campaign in 2020. The challenge encourages children to sign up, read 6 books during the holidays, and participants are then rewarded with a certificate and a medal. Traditionally, challengers are encouraged to visit their local library to sign up, but this year, the service promoted a specially designed County Council web page across Hampshire Library's social media platforms so that families could take part from home. The service also relaxed some of the rules to make it easier to participate this year, such as removing the age limits, suggesting that children create their own goals for the numbers of books they read, and by not specifying that only library books should be included. Challenges included comics, books from home or borrowed from libraries, books lent via the Ready Reads collection service or by downloading e-books and e-audiobooks from the Borrow Box online service. Extra investment in digital children's titles was made in advance of the challenge to support this wider offer. COVID-19 has had a significant impact on participation, with numbers well down on the 26,000 starters and 16,000 finishers from last year. However, no other authority in the South East region has taken Hampshire's individual approach, and so far 6,365 children have signed up on the Hampshire web page, with a further 4,079 Hampshire children signing up through the Reading Agency website, making Hampshire at this stage in the campaign the top performing authority in the region by some distance. The challenge officially ended on the 13th of September, and the Reading Agency will provide final regional figures after the end of this month. The library service are already busy analysing the numbers and will be working through Hampshire schools and local libraries throughout October to ensure challengers receive their all-important medals. And I do think that the library service deserves congratulations for having to carry this out. I know it's not as many as previously, but it's pretty good. And that is the end of my communications. And next we've got the Hampshire Cultural Trust update, and Paul Sapwell, you I believe are delivering that. And our recommendation at the end of this is just to note the presentation. Paul, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to attempt to share my screen, which hoping that the technology works. Has that shared with everybody?
Fine, Paul.
Great. Well, sorry, I didn't quite catch it. Now I can't actually see everybody. I can just see my screen. But I'm assuming that I'm shared with everybody.
Yes, shared.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So many thanks, Chairman. Many thanks to everyone for inviting us to present today. I'll talk through my presentation, brief introduction to who we are for those not familiar, and then talk through some of the highlights and performance of Hampshire Cultural Trust in 2019-20. Then talk you through our response to COVID-19 thus far, and some of the projects that we're looking at in the future. In terms of Hampshire Cultural Trust, we were set up, as I'm sure most are aware, in 2014 as an independent charity formed from the Arts and Museum Service of Hampshire County Council and Winchester City Council. We operate 23 venues across the county. We are the largest cultural trust of our kind in the country in terms of geographical spread and number of venues. And we're also one of the most multifaceted and diverse running art centres, a windmill, Roman villa, etc. And these venues, which I'm sure most are familiar with. As a charity, our vision is to create inspirational cultural experiences in Hampshire that enrich and transform lives. And our mission to provide great arts, heritage, museums and creative programming, working closely with our local partners and national partners, placing Hampshire's communities, the collections of our founding local authorities and the stories that come with them at the heart of everything we do. Our purpose, quite simply, being to change lives for the better through culture. In the last year, we have refined our 4 strategic goals, and it's under these goals that I'll present to you today. Our goal 1 is to provide high quality programmes and venues that engage diverse audiences and inspire local pride. Goal 2, critically, especially at the moment, to improve well-being, health and happiness through cultural experiences. And goal 3, to deliver a financially sustainable future for culture in Hampshire, contributing to the local economy and building stronger communities. And critically, goal 4 also that underpins how we do that to create fulfilling employment and volunteering opportunities through culture. We were due this year to have launched our strategic 5-year plan from 2020 to 2025. Understandably, given the COVID crisis back in March 2020, we delayed the launch of this plan to ensure that we understand the full impact of the crisis on the organisation. And I should say that the success of the organisation, as I'll demonstrate, has been one of the a crucial element in underpinning our response to the crisis and our relative position to the rest of the sector of relative resilience. Our identity today is recognition as a charity with social impact on our communities at our heart. We have a growing, strong reputation within the wider sector and continue to have a strong relationship with our founding partners. We see ourselves as an umbrella brand with local identities being critical, and the significant organisational transformation since creation of the Trust in 2014 has certainly seen us be able to enter this very difficult period in the strongest possible way. So in terms of 2019-20 seems a long time ago to me now, but some of the highlights and performance of the year. Under our first goal of high quality programmes and venues, we delivered some key exhibitions. Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, many of you will remember, across the 3 venues in partnership with our HCC colleagues, also at the Great Hall. Our first charging for exhibition and sold more than 8,000 tickets. The well-renowned BP Portrait Award came to Winchester for the very first time and attracted nearly 15,000 visitors, but was actually eclipsed in visitor numbers by Orla Kiley, A Life in Pattern at the Gallery, Winchester Discovery Centre, which was one of the most popular ever exhibitions at the Gallery, with 17,500 visitors. We also had an excellent exhibition, Lucian Day, Living Design, at the Sainsbury Gallery at the Willis. And in milestones, we commemorated the 80th anniversary of the outbreak of World War II with We'll Meet Again. And The fascinating I Grew Up 80s exhibition, quite scary for me to see some of the toys I grew up with in a museum now, at both Gosport Gallery and the Sainsbury Gallery in the Willis Museum in Basingstoke, was incredibly popular with the local communities there. What we were really proud of significantly in 2019-20 was the fact that we were able to invest back into HCC and WCC's venues, culminating with a £210,000 investment from HCT matched with 30,000 from Hampshire County Council into Milestones Museum, critical investment in our cafe and retail facilities and our welcome, bringing it right up to date, and that was launched there in February 2020. Sadly, only going for a month before COVID caused us to close, but as you'll see from the figures later on, the retail and cafe particularly being critical in our response since reopening. We also invested at Aldershot Military Museum £30,000 and saw investment from Farnborough Airport through the TAG fund administered by Rushmore of £15,000, enabling us to build a World War II inspired assault course outside the museum, with interpretation of where that of the basis of the assault course, but also creating this hands-on experience for families there. And fantastically for us, although we were unable to open when planned at Easter, we did open at the earliest opportunity on the 4th of July, and Aldershot Military Museum, quite unlike the rest of the sector, has actually performed better than last year over this summer. Winchester City Museum, we also invested £60,000 of our own funds into the second floor gallery there, the Gallery of 1,000 Years. Our schools programme continued to go from strength to strength. For the second year running, we were finalists in the Best Museums Visit at Milestones in the School Travel Awards, and were awarded the Sanford Award, non-competitive award, but for a quality mark for heritage education. The school's income was worth over £113,000 to us last year. In terms of our collections, all 17 museums that we manage on behalf of Hampshire County Council and Winchester City Council continue to meet the standards for Arts Council accreditation. We're re-accredited, and we accessioned 75 new objects last year. Selection of 34 framed and unframed landscape artworks by Hampshire artist Ronald Broad. The Georgian purse believed to have been found in the crypt at Winchester Cathedral. And we also loaned 56 historic handbags to Spielzeug Welton Museum in Basel, and that was a charged for loan, which also generated income for the trust. In terms of improving wellbeing, health and happiness, we continued our high quality, nationally renowned programmes, 18 targeted social impact programmes with 82 partners, 2,000 participants. Horizon 2020 is a 3-year project working in partnership with the 7 education centres in Hampshire, using engagement in the arts for the pupils excluded from mainstream education there. Sadly, the last year of that was unable to be delivered due to COVID, but fantastically we have received support from Paul Hamlin Foundation and Garfield Weston following funding applications during lockdown of just over £100,000 to continue the programme for another year. We also delivered the Summer Arts Award, which is our programme with the Hampshire's Youth Offending Team, and continued in the final year of our ICE project, working with Hampshire CAMS with young people suffering from mental health difficulties. Our Still Curious dementia-focused project began in November 2018, and that will run through to March this year. We received £50,000 from the National Lottery Heritage Fund investment in Red House Museum in Christchurch, and 2,500 sponsorship from Colton Care down there. We've created a dementia-friendly area in the museum, run heritage walks and reminiscent activity for residents in Christchurch. We also ran the Veterans Wellbeing programme up at Aldershot in partnership with Combat Stress, And we're just starting, but we've had to postpone, put on hold for the moment, our project with Solent Mind, working with men who are coming out of referral from that organisation, suffering with mental health issues, similar to the Men's Shed concept, working with our collections. Financially, 2019-20 marked a watershed moment for Hampshire Cultural Trust, in the fact that the biggest section of the pie chart now is our own earned income. And for the first time, earned income and fundraised income, our self-generated income, was higher than that funding from local authorities. This is a considerable achievement, as I hope you'll agree, given where we've been over the last 6 years. And despite closing halfway through March 2019-20 was the best year for the Trust financially since our inception. Visitor figures during the year, we had 450, just under 454,000 visitors visited our venues and paid for tickets in our art centres here. That was growth of 2.7% on last year, but we closed on the 18th of March due to COVID, and we anticipated that we would have had 15,000 more visitors given the trends at that point at closure, and 2019-20 would have been our busiest year yet had we not been forced to close at that point. A couple of things to point out on the visitor figures. You can see the growth that we were seeing at Aldershot Military Museum particularly, despite the COVID shutdown, and this is prior to the assault course going live, and significant growth also in Gosport Gallery following our investment there. More on that later. In terms of financials, a pretty impressive achievement, I hope you'll agree. 15-16 was the first year of the Trust's audited accounts, and in 19-20, despite COVID, we finished 44% up on 2016, 44% growth in earned income over those 4 years, with significant growth in areas of admissions. This is without adding any additional admission charge in venues at this stage. Good growth in food and beverage, we'd like to see more there, and retail, as well as box office schools. Gift aid, 25,500 in our first year, nearly 130,000 in last year. Venue donations up 200%. And despite lower visitor numbers due to the COVID crisis in 19-20, our spend per head up £1.78 on where we were 4 years ago. This has been absolutely critical for the Trust, as I'll show you on this slide, in terms of generating this small surplus last year in enabling us to be more resilient in the first stage of the COVID crisis that we've been facing since March. Under Goal 4, we enabled us to enhance our benefits to our staff. Back in December, we launched a new package of benefit measures for our staff, including additional life insurance for those who are on our pension scheme. We increased holiday allowance, introduced a cycle to work scheme, an employee support line, and a health cash plan where people can access health benefits through a salary sacrifice scheme. We also introduced the concept of gift aids, where an employee can apply to their line manager for 2 gift days per year to experience a different team, venue or event within the Trust. We introduced a new e-learning platform and cross-trust wide learning and development programs with over 1,800 hours of training. We also developed for a newly developed value framework which underpins everything that we do as an organisation. So in terms of our response to COVID-19, our venues closed on the 24th of March. We postponed 105 events and 71 events were cancelled. From the off, we had a structured internal communication plan with regular updates on the workplace platform, which is our internal social media platform that we communicate with our staff. We furloughed 160 employees and casual workers in April. That's 46% of our full-time equivalents. We only furloughed the proportion of staff that would be supported by our own earned income as opposed to that supported by local authority income. And we secured assistance from business grants and some emergency funding from the NLHF. Within 10 days of closure, our digital investment that we've made over the past 4 years, which has underpinned a lot of our commercial success, enabled us to publish a new website, a new digital publication, Culture on Call, which we made live, as I say, within 10 days of closing the venues. Creating a website from start to finish and getting it live with content in 10 days is no mean feat, and I'm incredibly proud of the team in managing to do that. It showcases the breadth, depth, creativity of our programme. We've now run it for 20 weeks with 224 articles and 50,000 page visits. People who access Culture on Call can access all of the various areas of our programme digitally, learn about our social impact, any articles about the various areas that we look after, lots of information on well-being, and this fantastic cartoon that one of our illustrators has been doing for children over the course of lockdown, visiting a number of our museums. Here they are at the Aldershot Assault Course. Culture on Call generated significant interest actually from the press, and we've had a number of good pieces of press interest during lockdown. We were interviewed on, or I was interviewed on BBC South Today on Culture on Call on how we've got our programme online so quickly. We took part here in one of the curator challenges, which went in the Times a few weeks ago on themed curator challenge across the country. It was, in terms of have you got something to compete with these quirky ideas, and here is a Hampshire Hampshire work of art which ended up in the Times. And we were also interviewed by Meridian, ITV Meridian here, regarding our reopening, which has been one of the quickest in the sector. We put our social impact programs online. We took our Brighter Futures project supporting adults with mental health online. We booked out 12 free courses between April and July, and this included Poetry for Wellbeing, 2 life writing for wellbeing courses led by the Hampshire poet there, Catherine Beavis. Our art centres launched online classes to replace the on-site delivery. We had some pre-recorded content and live sessions, and we had topics there ranging from art appreciation and painting, street dance, meditation. We had over 200 participants during lockdown, which was over £3,000 of income. And since reopening in a measured, socially distanced way, we've complemented that by continuing the online version of courses for those who wish to use the virtual medium. The live performance programme has been severely impacted, and as you will know from the national picture, this is the most difficult area of the business to get back up and running. But we did invest early on in live streaming, which has been successful. We took our popular Westival Festival up at Aldershot online and streamed that over the second weekend of July. In terms of reopening, as I say, we've had a sector leading response, to be honest, in terms of our reopening. We were planning for reopening at the Trust as soon as we closed, and therefore wanted to be on the front foot once the government announced that we could reopen. Due to our digital investment, we were able to take our ticketing and booking system, which we use at Milestones and Aldershot and our paid for venues, and adapt that for our non-paid for venues with timed booking slots for those venues. We had a project looking from the beginning of May at high quality safety measures in place, developing the risk assessments as early as we could. All of our risk assessments are completed and published online for all venues. And we looked at the campaign almost as though it was a marketing campaign, if you like, and developed actually 150 individual safety signs designed and produced for our venues. We also installed contactless donation units across all of the venues of the Trust. And here was our 5-phase opening plan, starting on the 1st of June for our Chilcombe House site for staff. And then from the 4th of July, we opened our admission charging venues. Most venues were open by the 1st of August, including the art centres, although for the art centres performance programmes, they have only just gone live this week. But all the other venues have been up and running across the summer. We went round as a team to every single one of our venues before reopening, met all of the staff, myself and the marketing and the health and safety team to ensure everyone was comfortable with reopening and that the measures were adequate. And there has been, I think it's fair to say, a huge amount of positivity across the Trust from our staff and volunteers with the measures that we've taken to help them feel safe, make them safe on the reopening. Some other examples here: updated signage here at Milestones for staying safe, updated signage here at the Westgate, contactless donation units. We've put branded sanitisation stations across, and we've installed bespoke perspex screens at every single one of our venues over the course of June. Some examples here of some of the quirky ways that we've looked to embrace social distancing and give visitors to the museums something to look for in the museums. Here the penny farthing at Winchester City Museum, here the Victorian bicycle at Milestones, and an armoured car at Aldershot Military Museum. So looking ahead, where are we? Well, in terms of our year-end forecast 2020-21, quite staggering. We're anticipating, this was the forecast we put together using industry intelligence as much as anyone could predict back in June before reopening. We have anticipated that by the end of the year we will have achieved 20% of the visitors that we had in the previous year. So as you can see, this is an enormous impact on our business in comparison to our original budget of 438,000. Of course, Hampshire Cultural Trust, given our success in moving to an earned income model rather than a local authority funded model, has been impacted hugely by this reduction in visitors. And we did make an application in September to the Arts Council England Cultural Recovery Fund of £480,000. Where will this leave us in terms of the year end? It will leave us, you can't quite see that there, apologies. If we are successful with the £480,000 funding from the Arts Council, we anticipated back in June that we would have a deficit of just under £500,000 this year. The measures that we've taken in terms of costs there is that we have had a recruitment freeze since the beginning of the year. We've not implemented any cost of living rise, and whilst our casual and hourly paid staff, our workers, have been on furlough leave, unfortunately we will not be taking that labour back onto the books when the furlough leave finishes. We've reduced all non-essential maintenance, our exhibitions, direct costs, a small reduction in marketing, but we have seen an increase in obviously our COVID-related costs, but significant savings that we've had to make across the trust. Although we have been helped in the first 4 months by the coronavirus job retention rebate. So this is where we believed that we would be in June. That position does put us, given the healthy surplus that we generated last year and the reserves position that we accumulated over the 4 years that we were a trust. That does mean that we're not at significant risk this year of anything more severe. We can absorb this £500,000 reduction. If we're not successful with the ACE emergency funding, that will be more difficult, but again we do feel that we will be able to absorb that this year. Like so much of the sector in our position, the big risk on our horizon is what happens in 2021 and beyond, assuming that that the crisis continues into that period. This said, we haven't waited around for the funding from the Arts Council. We put a full promotional campaign in over the summer, with It's Time for Great Days Out being launched at the beginning of July here at Aldershot Military Museum, which has been really successful. Basing House, focusing on our outdoor venues. We've launched this campaign. Basing House has actually performed again better this summer than it did in the previous year, partly due to the campaign and the events that we've put on. We've also launched a fundraising campaign within venues that talks about reconnecting communities through culture on the same theme. We have still, unlike a number of organisations, we have, where we can, continue to have events here in our outdoors venue. We put on outdoor cinema, socially distanced at Basing House in August. We continued with our Tudor Day at Basing House also, and our reopened cafe there. And here at Bursledon Windmill, we've continued with events with the right risk assessment in place and keeping distancing and all of the areas that we need to enable us to continue to put on events as much as possible. Here at Milestones, we did do something for VJ Day, and here's all our staff at Milestones in the new shop with our bespoke face coverings. During lockdown, I should say, we put the Hampshire wardrobe team, our costumed hire team, onto making face coverings for everybody across the organisation. So they were working from home. They made about, I think it's just under 500 face coverings in the last couple of months, and we've now put those on sale in our museum shops as well. The feedback that we've had from visitors at Milestones has been here and elsewhere has been terrific. And in our flagship galleries, we've returned where we've left off. We've still had Wildlife Photographer of the Year on in Winchester, the Wonderful World of Ladybird, and a microsculpture in Gosport. And in terms of income, we've performed better than we thought, which is to be frank, it's not enough, but is better than the forecast that we put together beforehand. And we're really encouraged by the fact that the spend per head in particular has been higher than anticipated. July, we weren't fully open for the whole month, so I've put on August here, and you can see that actually our admissions across the month were significantly above where we forecast at 66,000, and not doing bad compared to 108,000 last year. The other area which has really done well is the shop sales. Our income per head in retail, particularly in the Milestones shop, has been much higher than anticipated. And whilst cafe and bar sales haven't been as strong, understandably, with the social distancing required, we have performed better than we envisaged there. So overall, a positive story in August and a positive story in July. But what we've seen now going into September is the midweek, the dark midweeks of the winter is our real challenge, where we would typically see older visitors on coach parties and schools, both of which are clearly not coming back at this stage. So looking ahead, a snapshot there of some of the exhibitions that are coming up across the organisation. We continue to plan to have these exhibitions over the duration of the year. Particularly excited about Sunday Times watercolour competition coming there to the Willis on the 27th of October. And also something that we're incredibly proud of is that during July, we actually took place later than planned in a pulse survey organised by the best companies. We went to Best Companies. I've used them in a previous life, and these are the external company who is responsible for the Sunday Times top 100 lists. A pulse survey is where you don't take part in the formal list, but you take part in the same process, and they give you feedback on where you can improve in terms of staff engagement. And we were absolutely blown away that in July, in the middle of the COVID crisis, our staff and volunteers came back with an overall engagement score of 686, which would have, had we taken part in the official scheme, would have put us in the top 100 best for not-for-profit organisations to work for. Our indicative placing would have been number 54. So I think this is testament to the engagement, the will and the hard work of our staff, which has enabled us to respond to the crisis so positively. We're still continuing with our plans to invest in milestones towards the end of the year. We don't believe in we've cut back our revenue spending where we have to, but we took the decision that we would continue to invest for growth in the right places. And so we're continuing with our plans to use some legacy money from a gentleman called Mr. Simpson, who's left us a number of teddy bears to create a new teddy bear museum within milestones. We've also given notice to the external contractor who runs our penny arcade machines there, and are building our own milestones pier attraction, which we will open in February half term. We're also carrying on full steam ahead with the Gosport project at the old grammar school. Down at Gosport, we've seen 26% growth in 4 years at the site, and you'll be familiar that we have been fundraising to bring the building back into full use there, re-establish local history museum, create a new cafe and retail offer based on what we've successfully delivered elsewhere, and refurbish the spaces, expand the play gallery and open a new community gallery. This project at the moment, we have another £108,000 to find on this project, but it's been really successful in the sense that we've got this partnership of multiple funders in play to develop this capital project, from 100,000 Gosport Borough Council, 374 from Hampshire, including in-kind support, our own 200,000 from our funds, and we were successful earlier in the year, you may recall, with the High Streets Heritage Action Zone funding, which we heavily supported Gosport Borough Council in applying for, which gave us 467,000 towards the project. And the Friends of Gosport Museum have also come up with 50,000 towards it. So we're confident that given this funding model and hopefully the capital schemes for the national funders opening again within the next 6 months, that we'll find the extra 108. So that's about the size of it. Thank you very much for inviting me. I guess I take questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh dear, thank you very much indeed, Paul. Extremely interesting. Now, why is that? Any ideas?
I've unshared my screen now, so I think you should be back, are you?
Yes, we are. I seem to be in double. Thank you. That was extremely interesting and actually very encouraging. And your organisation has shown great courage in just continuing with your work. Now I've got Councillor Carter wants to ask you something.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Really, I don't have a question. I as a Gosport member, I'd just like to say thank you for your report, and I'm delighted to know that work with the Gosport Gallery is progressing, and certainly we really look forward to that coming on stream. I've been really impressed with the figures for gift aid. How are you actually, well, I am asking a question. How are you really promoting that? Because there's significant sums come in there.
Yes, gift aid is, we've had a strategy for some time. This comes down to digital customer journey effectively. The more that you can drive your customers online to book tickets, the higher proportion of gift aid you will achieve effectively, because you're just asking people to tick a box. I mean, we've had an active campaign in the museums to get the staff to sort of upsell, if you like, the gift aid, and this very much comes from my background before joining the trust, that actually computers and a digital journey are much better at selling things and upselling than people on counters. One of the big successes there has been that we've improved the slickness really of the journey for booking tickets at milestones in particular, and that's continued at Aldershot. And actually, one of the positives of the crisis, if there is any positives, has been that in people having to book online, we've seen over, I think, a maximum actually at 1 week in August of 80% of people at milestones booking online. The gift aid this summer has gone up even more. So it's really for most people it's a bit of a no-brainer if you manage to get it into the journey, but you can only do it by the only way that you can be eligible for it, just to sort of finish the point, is by promoting an annual ticket. And we moved 2 years ago at milestones and our charging venues to an annual ticket, which legally is classed as a kind of a membership, and therefore you can collect the gift aid on that ticket. And actually we did the commercial sums before that, which said that we would gain more gift aid than we lost through people repeat visiting and not paying, and that's come to fruition. So we are actually seeing a good growth in that this year as well.
Well, very well done. I'm very impressed with that, and it bodes well for the future, doesn't it? It really does. Thank you for that. Thank you.
And now I know Councillor Chegwin wants to speak. Councillor Chegwin, do you want to come in now? Can you unmute?
Hopefully you can hear me now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have difficulties with the technologies, you know, Chairman. Thank you, and thank you to Paul for the presentation. Like Councillor Carter, I welcome the capital investment in the Gosport Gallery, particularly because I opened the original gallery when I was chairman of the then County Arts Board in the mid-1990s, and the investment will be very welcome. A few questions, which, if you don't mind, Chairman, I'll ask all together in case the technology doesn't let me back in again. I was going to query a couple of the points pre-March, particularly noting the visitor numbers. Although you said the income's well up, visitor numbers have actually gone down over the last 5 years. And I notice also that all the art centres directors seem to have left, which is a great pity. But frankly, anything pre-March seems so long ago now. The position has totally changed, as Paul said. 3 questions on the report. One, under goal 3, Paul, you mentioned that in 1920 financial year, LA grants are down by 78,812. I wonder if you could just expand on why that is. It seems quite a large variance, and I gather from the report it's likely to go down further in the coming year. Secondly, you mentioned under COVID-19 response that 160 staff have been furloughed. And if I heard you right in your presentation, you said that when furlough ends, you're not going to be able to take those staff back on. Does that mean that 160 jobs are going within the Cultural Trust, full and part-time? And the third question, and perhaps looking forward, the most important, you said that you're forecasting a deficit this year of 500,000, and that will actually rise to nearly 1 million if you don't get in full the money you've applied for from the Arts Council England Cultural Recovery Fund. I think I'm right in saying you should hear that on or around October the 4th. That seems to be the date that they're suggesting they'll tell people what they've got and what they haven't. If you don't get that in full, obviously the deficit rises up to potentially 1 million. But as you said, because you've been successful in recent years financially, you can absorb that this year. The problem surely is what happens from now on, because your budget is forecast very much on where we stand and where we thought we were going to be. And I speak with someone with an interest myself in the arts community, but it looks sadly as if everything could change again this week, and particularly venues, and particularly for the live performance programme, could find the opening dates, and you said you were hoping to open some this week, but it could be opening dates are going to be put back and put back and put back again. And surely one of the big problems you face is the uncertainty of just not knowing when the art centres can open again at anything like full capacity or even financially viable capacity, whatever that may be. And there must be a knock-on effect with museums and art galleries as well, if people are being advised to stay at home again and not go out and socialise. So the three questions to summarise: the variance in LA grants under goal 3, the 78,000, a bit more detail. The 160 furlough jobs, were you saying that those are not going to come back and therefore 160 jobs are at risk? And what happens if you don't get the Arts Council England money, or even if you do, and let's hope you do, but given the fact that things are changing yet again, the future surely for live performances at least is very uncertain, and it must make your life extremely difficult trying to plan with no certainty from government of when you're going to be able to do things again in a financially viable way. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Well, I think I've got most of those points. So, just on the point of visitor numbers, important to say that the visitor numbers that you saw there on that number were without the last 2 weeks trading of March, and actually year to date against the previous trading do show growth on where we started. And had we not closed in March, in terms of the bookings that we had ahead, we would have seen growth in visitor numbers compared to the start, and so we have had growth over those years in volume as well as yield. In terms of the local authority grants, when we were set up by Hampshire County Council and Winchester City Council, we had a 5-year agreement for grant reduction, and we then agreed a further 3 years reduction, which has started this year. So the amount that's in there will be the reduction that we've seen from our founding local authorities of grant in that year. We saw effectively in the first 3 years 5% reduction, then in year 4 10%, and then in year 5 5%. And this year, on top of the deficit that we're already facing, we are absorbing a 7.5% reduction in funding again from HCC and WCC. We've also seen a number of the districts and boroughs who used to contribute funding to the individual museums withdraw or reduce their funding. So, for example, Eastleigh Council reduced their funding last year by about 8,000. So it's accumulation of that effect that we have seen those reductions. And the model was, of course, to replace that funding with our own earned income, which up until this year we were highly successful in doing. However, obviously this year that will not be the case. In terms of the 160 jobs, important here to differentiate between the jobs which are employees of our organisation and those which are what they call casual workers, who are the sort of hourly paid people who support our venues on a sort of ad hoc basis. We have no plans for any mass redundancies at the end of furlough across the organisation. Indeed, we wouldn't be able to sustain our opening if that was the case. But what we have, what I was referring to in terms of the people who won't return, will be the workers who are on, it's not 0 hours contracts, but it's those workers who work on an ad hoc basis. So these will be some of the tutors who deliver in the art centres where programmes aren't going ahead, who aren't employees of the company but are still paid through our payroll and were therefore eligible for furlough. And it's those jobs which unfortunately we're not going to have the business to sustain when we reopen, and part of our model has been to use our own staff more flexibly across the business in order to sustain that.
But that's 160, is it, Paul?
It's 160 different members of staff were furloughed at a given point. I haven't got the proportion, although I can get it for you, of those who are on casual workers and those who are employees. In terms of I mean, a lot of those people in terms of staff, I mean, it's really important to stress that that is not 160 full-time equivalents. Some of those people could be a tutor who was maybe delivering a course for an hour a week or something like that. So This is not 160 staff from the Cultural Trust, and I am in no way suggesting that we are making redundant or removing jobs from that level of staff in the Cultural Trust. That's
but
not.
It is 160 jobs, even if some of them were freelance.
Yes, but a number of those jobs are people who work directly for us, and those jobs are not at risk. So the number of casual staff who work for us, I can get you the number afterwards of the breakdown. But there are, yes, of course, in terms of those who are delivering courses, those staff who work behind the bar, for example, at the art centres in the evening when there was a performance on, who are paid on a hourly paid kind of as and when, no obligation for them to come in, etc. Those roles we still can't sustain. But it's the wrong figure to suggest that is 160. I can get you the figure, but it's not. 160 is the number of individual staff who were placed on furlough leave overall, and there's a variety of roles within that. In terms of the £1 million deficit, absolutely. I mean, what you say in terms of business planning, we are like everybody else. You know, we can't predict what will happen at the end of the year. The numbers that I showed you there in terms of seeing the £500,000 deficit were based on where we thought we would be before reopening, and it has been encouraging that we've performed better than that commercially. So I would hope that we would be able to mitigate that deficit to some degree, provided we don't go into a full national lockdown again for 6 months. I'm confident that we can mitigate that. But you are right in saying that in terms of being able to plan with any certainty, is, like any business at the moment, is incredibly difficult. But what we're absolutely determined to do is to ensure that we're not we haven't taken the stance of retrenchment. We don't wish to be. We have to mitigate our costs in the right way and in a balanced way, but at the same time we don't want to be in a position where we're not opening with anything for people to do. So the kind of investments that we're making in milestones to give us a theme, for example, in February and Easter, assuming that we can that we are remaining open, albeit with reduced capacity, there is really important. So, for example, the Lego exhibition that we do at Milestones costs us quite a significant amount of money each year. So we've cancelled that exhibition for February, but instead we're developing the permanent exhibition, which is the teddy bears shop, which has come from restricted funds from a legacy, which is not unrestricted for us anyway. So we have another theme, and it's those kind of decisions that we're making to ensure that we're keeping our programme alive. In terms of the art centres, absolutely, the art centres are the hardest hit area of our business. The idea that they can be back up to self-sustaining at some point is, I mean, they never were self-sustaining, let's be clear. They always required subsidy, but in terms of the performance programme, the idea that will be anywhere near where it needs to be in the short to medium term is really highly unlikely. But this, if I may say, is the strength of the trust model, as opposed to some of the organisations which are struggling individually. If those art centres were standalone, as some of our other centres are across the country and across the county, they would be in a lot more dire straits than they are under the trust umbrella. And the strength of our model is that we have this multifaceted programme, which is a challenge to deliver with reducing funding and therefore pressure on staff 100%. But we can target growth in areas like Milestones, like Aldershot, like Winchester, where we've introduced a small admission charging this year to cross-subsidise those areas that are struggling, and that's a particular strength of Hampshire Cultural Trust in comparison to standalone organisations which would find that more difficult. And in terms, just on the last point, when you say it's disappointing that there aren't directors in the art centres, there's a number of reasons for the fact that those individuals left, but there was no we've changed the way that we've staffed there, but we haven't been reducing the investment in the art centres. We have an artistic director who sits across all three now and a general manager in each of them, rather than a director in each one. So it's a different model, but it's not retrenchment.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for very full answers. Thank you.
And now I've got Councillor Hiscox and Councillor Benison, but I see Councillor Woodward has asked to come in. So, Councillor Woodward.
That's very kind, Chairman. I wasn't looking to queue jump in anyway. It was just a comment really on what Paul has said. I just think it's so important to the points he's highlighted around having reserves, which of course is a really good idea, and this is exactly the sort of time where they are needed to be used. But the thing I took most comfort from was his assurances that the Trust is continuing to invest and is looking to the future. I know it's easy for organisations just to sort of hunker down, and then I think the losses become far worse, and depression, demoralisation, everything sets in. So I'm just so pleased to see that there are significant investments still being made, which hopefully will pay dividends once, depending what the Prime Minister is going to say in a few minutes, what we can actually come back to, and hopefully people can start to take part in the arts and culture. But thank you for allowing me to comment, Chairman.
I felt you wanted to say something on the immediate point. Okay, Councillor Hiscox.
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank you, Paul, for the very high quality exhibitions that you've been able to put on in Winchester, the Discovery Centre. They've been, as you can see from the figures, very well received and have made a significant contribution, I think, to the cultural offer in the city. My question really is one of concern. Because of the proposed very significant reduction in opening hours for the Discovery Centre, is this going to affect the quality or the viability of some of the exhibitions you've been able to attract to us?
Well, I should certainly hope that it's not going to affect the quality, and one of our aspirations and is continued high quality, and so we're planning. These exhibitions actually take an incredible amount of time and planning to, especially the national ones. So we're planning sort of 2 or 3 years out, and I can assure you that the shows are of the increasing quality that we've that you're used to seeing. I mean, clearly a reduction in opening hours and access to the WDC will restrict numbers into our galleries, but I am talking with the library's colleagues at length about how we might be able to provide access to those galleries outside of those opening hours. I don't have an answer for you yet, and that's probably not for me to answer, but I can assure you that the concern is we would like to find a solution, but we're having very positive conversations at the moment.
Thank you. I shall continue the conversations as well about how that can be achieved. Thank you.
I now have Councillor Benison.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Paul, for your very lucid report there. I've got a couple of simple questions for you. On your well-being slide, you had cycle to work. So it's probably a very unfair question because it started in April when lockdown was already started. So I don't know what response you've had from that from members of staff. And also the Aldershot Military Museum. You've found an increase in visits to that museum, and this was before, if I read it rightly, before the investment went in with the assault course in there. So, have you any ideas why that should be so popular? Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, I can answer both of those points. I mean, in terms of cycle to work scheme, I don't have the numbers of take up, and as you rightly say, actually, it did go live at the beginning of the year when when a number of our staff were working from home. So I haven't got the exact figures on take up, but what I do know from feedback from the staff and our internal social media platform is that it's been incredibly well received. So I would hope that on return we will see a good take up of that, both for our head office and across the venues, of course. Aldershot, yeah, it's been one of the success stories of the trust. I mean, following our part of this is following the principle that was behind our restructuring of a couple of years ago, where we sought to put social impact and community engagement as the central purpose behind our community museums. And actually within that, we employed community managers rather than the traditional title of curator in those community museums. Some curators still work in those museums, but we have a balance of skills actually across the different museums, of people who are experienced in community outreach and those who are experienced with collections, ably supported by the central collections team, so they don't lose that credibility and that quality. And actually the social outreach there at Aldershot has really underpinned that growth. We had somebody who was very active within the military communities there. We brought somebody in not from a traditional museums background, but who had those connections across Aldershot, and she worked with a large number of the community groups, including the Gurkha population in Aldershot and the military, and that sort of doubled down with more social media and that sort of looking outwards, if you like, is what built that. We saw this increase over time, and that was what really gave us the confidence a year ago to invest further and really try and capitalize on that spend. You know, there's a huge growth there in housing in Aldershot, and people need and young families being a growth, if you like, market for us. And so we've tried to put on provision which is suitable for them, and we're going to continue to do that. And yeah, so we're hoping that growth line after COVID, whenever that is, will pick up to where it was before.
Thank you very much indeed, and that's been extremely interesting. And I do congratulate you. One, you obviously used the lockdown time incredibly productively, because there's a lot of detail behind what you've done, and also your position of the best companies thing shows that you've paid real attention to morale, and that's incredibly important and quite difficult in these uncertain times. But thank you very much indeed, and may your good work prosper. Thank you.
Many thanks, Chairman. Thank you.
And now, so the important thing is now is really just to note the update presentation from the members of the committee. I think we can say it's noted. Next on the agenda is the Country Parks update, and that is being introduced by Joe Heath, the head of Countryside. Joe, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just make sure I can share content here. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman, and welcome this opportunity to update members of the Select Committee on the impact that COVID has had on country parks, but also an update on how we've been getting on with our country park transformation. So I'm going to start with that. Let's start with some good news. And a little reminder what the country park transformation is all about, and it's an investment in our country parks and our farm attractions to ensure that they're meeting the needs of our customers for the future. As many of you know, we probably hadn't really invested in our parks for around 30 odd years, and in some cases not really since we took them on. And that meant that some of the maintenance of these parks was beginning to become a burden on our revenue funding as well. So the aim is to really encourage more visitors to visit our parks, to stay longer, to spend a bit more money, and to do that we needed to make sure that the customer offer was modern, was up to date, and was meeting their needs, and that we had a bit more of a smoother visitor numbers across the year. So we had more people coming during wet weather, for example, a time when we normally get drop off. A lot of the investment focused around improved catering, more attractive environments, and also looking to our long-term maintenance and management of these assets, some of which are incredibly important from a historic point of view. So the programme really kicked off in 2014, and we are starting to come to the end now of the phase 1 of that programme. It's been a little bit drawn out because of the delays through COVID, but I'm pleased to say that we're pretty much back on track. You'll see through the presentation that the scale of investment differs across the parks, but it's fair to say that it has made a huge transformation, if you like, in all of these parks. They're different places, and if you haven't had a chance to visit, I would recommend you do so. What is really important about this investment is that ultimately we aim to have a suite of operationally self-financing parks, and we started off with around £400,000 that they were costing the county council to run from revenue, and hopefully can demonstrate that we're pretty much there now. As I say, I hope members have had a chance to visit these parks, and a reminder that members of the Select Committee are able to get free parking. So if you haven't updated your details, please do so, and if you haven't ever registered them, please just drop me a line with your car registration details, and I'll make sure that they're on the system. So the next few slides, I'm just going to show you some pretty pictures really of how our investment has been spent across all the parks. And we're going to start with Leap here, which is our flagship project, really opened in May 2018. It's a £3 million investment, of which we received quite a bit of funding from the LEP, around £800,000 from the for the local enterprise partnership. And this development has won a number of architectural awards, sorry, due to its design, the way that it fits into the landscape, and also its adaptation to the surroundings. A lot of you will know that this is an area that gets flooded, that the previous buildings were flooded regularly, and we're starting to cost the county council a huge amount of money to renovate or restore after a flooding event. We have had a flooding event here earlier this year, and it was great to see the building actually stand up to that, which is what it's designed to do, of course. After opening, we've experienced quite an increase in visitor numbers, up by around 25% in the first year. But as well as the building, which is obviously our flagship and an amazing structure, there have been other improvements across the park as well. We've improved our play, we've improved the car parking, and working with the Friends of Leap, who have designed and created a sensory garden, which I think members have had a chance to visit previously. And that was done entirely with Friends funding and their time and energy as well. So we're very grateful for them for that. Moving on, Queen Elizabeth Country Park. Well, this originally the visitor centre was designed by the Cass and Condor Partnership. They also designed the Elephant House, we always talk about that, London Zoo, and was originally opened in 1977. So one of the early country parks, I think it's fair to say, across the country. It was in dire need for an uplift to meet today's needs. Those of you who visited before will know you sort of arrive to the bins and a very dark corridor. So the £2 million that we've spent here has completely changed the environment of the visitor centre, and particularly the cafe, with a hugely improved kitchen and a light and airy space now to sit and enjoy a new menu. And we also have the Casson room, so a large room that's multifunctional, can be booked by local communities, and we're looking to hold some we're starting to develop, if you like, some health and wellbeing activities here as well, such as yoga, which really complements the use of the park, which is a very active park. Things like park runs are held here regularly, and the site is increasingly important for cyclists as well. We, as well as the building, along with all the transformation projects, it's not just about the building. We're also looking at increasing the activities that people are able to do when they come. And with Armed Forces Covenant Fund, which I noticed the previous presentation, they've also benefited from, we've created an assault course. I would really it's a fantastic structures if you haven't seen it. I can't get over them, but it's not really designed for me. I think it's teenagers really, and those that are in the armed forces, of course. But an assault course, we've got new woodland play areas and a dog activity trail. And that was funded by Armed Covenant funding, along with a barbecue area that communities can use as well, and a pizza area, which is really interesting, is very popular. The kiosk at the top of the hill was also upgraded, and that serves that sort of area where the assault course is. And during lockdown, that's been immensely important for us to be able to serve takeaway from up there. On some occasions, we were getting around £1,000 income in a single day, which is very good for us there. And whilst the major parts of the scheme are completed, we are still working with partners to gain some investment in improving bike facilities and some of the preschool play as well. And I think that just reminds me that whilst this investment has made a huge difference, we don't stop there. We are continuously trying to improve the offer and look for other funding opportunities to do so across all of the parks. The chapel, well, this Grade 2 listed chapel is all that remains of the immense hospital that was military hospital that was here and built in 1863. This is a £3.5 million project jointly funded with the National Heritage Lottery Fund and included a lot of desperately needed conservation works. The building was never really designed to be exposed to the elements. It was in amongst all the wards and all the other built part of the hospital and set back. So we've had a lot of stonework conservation. Windows were badly damaged and they've been restored as well. Alongside that, we've improved access with a lift that takes people up to the second floor. And also what was more important in some ways is telling the stories of those that lived and worked here throughout its time serving throughout the World Wars. We have also added a new wing, which has enabled us to have improved toilets and a small catering function as well. The centre is mainly staffed with volunteers, and it's the volunteers that have really helped gather those stories together and present them to our visitors. We have landscape features that help to define the scale and size of the original building. And it's a fantastic project. I mean, as you can see from one of the pictures, we've gone back and looked at all the original paint colours and they've been all restored. Manor Farm, the scale of the funding here is around £500,000. And we some time ago sort of divorced, if you like, the Manor Farm from River Hamble Country Park. You actually go through the River Hamble Country Park to get to Manor Farm at the top. It's about 1.5 miles. But because people were, we found that our visitors were not really aware that there was two distinct offers here. One was a big parkland and one was this lovely historic farm visit. Then we've, for marketing purposes, sort of divorced them, but they very much work together. As you can see from this picture, whilst we were in lockdown, the team worked incredibly hard to really improve this farmyard setting, which looks amazing. And what you don't see is the other works that have gone on. We now have a interactive chicken run, which not only is great for our young visitors, mainly families that come to this site, but it also means that we can very quickly respond if we have anything like an avian flu outbreak, which we have had before. We can shut it off and we haven't got and keep visitors away very safe and securely, but they can still see them as well from a distance. So it's a great facility the staff have worked on. We have recently built an overwintering facility, mainly for overwintering our stock that serve to graze across the whole estate, but it also provides a draw for our visitors. We have a gantry that means that our visitors can go up and see lambing and other livestock activities whilst we're in use. So a bit more, I'll show you what else is happening here a bit later, a bit of a teaser. Let me just move forward. Staunton Farm, well, this is our latest. It's just about open, and I'll focus on the country park to start with, which is again a National Lottery Heritage Fund and Big Lottery funded project. They gave us 2.85 million. The total scheme is around 4 million, and just under 1 million in the farm. So the park itself has seen this coach house that you see on the right here that's been renovated and now houses a catering function, a new tea rooms, which is fantastic to have some catering over in that side of the park as well. But more importantly, or as importantly, it was about restoring the landscape, the historic landscape, the follies that are there, which all needed conservation works doing on them as well. It's a Grade 2 listed landscape, and so important that we were able to restore some of those features. And you can see here, there used to be a manor house on that on the terrace, and what we've done is marked out the rooms of that manor house so you get an idea of what was there previously. What is different, I guess, about this as well is that we now have the local school delivering the catering here, which is different to the setup we have everywhere else. We felt that was really important because of the local community contacts that the school has. This is very much a park right in the heart of Lee Park, and therefore we were keen to work with a local community group to deliver their catering function rather than ourselves, and they opened literally a couple of weeks ago and are doing fantastically well. The farm itself is more of an ornamental farm, a ferme ornée apparently, and it's very popular with preschool children. And what we've done is invest in the cafe space here, and with plans for visitor centre and toilets later on this year. So the cafe is just a better environment, better working space, as well as a better space for our visitors. So the work in progress is, well, I've got a new indoor play barn at Manor Farm, which we've done lots of work with our visitors on, helping us to design it, and that is currently going up to be opened in hopefully October half term, if we have an October half term. And we also have a new barn going in at River Hamble Country Park, and some new play. The middle picture is new outdoor play at River Hamble Country Park as well. So this is work that's currently in progress, and then more to come. You'll see the barn at Barnfield on the right there, or maybe on your left, and also, then if you like, the next phase is an investment of 1.5 million in the cafe at River Hamble Country Park, Royal Victoria Country Park. Currently, these are the Empire Rooms, again listed building, and it's quite an ambitious programme here of putting a pizza oven and a very contemporary offer into a very historic place. So we're working hard with architects and the listed planning building consent to make that happen. We're due to start there in December with an aim to finish before the summer next year. One of the most significant changes has been the introduction of automatic number plate recognition, which has increased our, I know this slide says honesty rating, we should say compliance really, our compliance from an average of 73%. In fact, in some places it was as low as around 60%, from 17-18 to over 95% average. And this is really just making sure that people pay what they should be paying. Alongside, obviously, the ability for us to take the money that we should be taking, it has given us a huge wealth of information about how long people are staying, their dwell times, where the peak areas of the week are, peak areas of the year, and we've been able to adjust our pricing structure to make it better, not only for us, but also for the customer, which is really important. And this year, for the first year, we've introduced a off-peak and peak charging rates as well. It's enabled us to be more flexible with that. And those off-peak charging rates mean that we're trying to encourage people in those sort of cooler months when we often see a drop off. As you can see, it's not quite live everywhere at the moment. This is a new car park going in at Staunton Park as part of that development, 300 spaces, which will take the pressure off some of the parking that happens outside of the park as well. And also River Hamble Country Park is due both to be live by the end of the year. And I think that will also have an impact, significant impact on our bottom line. The MPR it's been fantastic, but it does take quite a lot of infrastructure investment in order to get up and working, particularly in our more rural settings as well. I put this slide in just to really illustrate the scale of investment across each of the parks. We managed to achieve around 7 million of external funding to date against that figure of 19.5. From previous discussions, you'll probably know that we also sold a number of assets, which has resulted in around £3.5 million. And then the rest of that has been from Hampshire County Council capital. So what we're seeing to date is a benefit of that investment. As I mentioned earlier, we were looking at making around an additional £500,000 in income, and you can see we've done that. Our income is up by about 27% and our visitors are up about 15%. Now, a lot of the time we talk about increasing visitors, and I think that is important, particularly across the year. But what is also important is that we increase our spend per head, so that we're actually giving customers a really good experience. There's a lot more on offer, the quality is better, and therefore we're charging a little bit more, or have been. And I think it's fair to say this is not a short-term programme. We're not seeing, not all of those transformation projects are complete yet, and so we're expecting to, well, pre-COVID anyway, we were expecting to see this continue to rise. I think it's fair to say the trend across the country is probably increasing as well, so we're benefiting from that. Before I move on, I'd just like to mention that one of the changes that we've also made is on the 1st of December, the catering staff moved from HC3S, which is who were running our cafes across the piece everywhere except to Staunton Coach House, and they've moved to the countryside service. So we now run our catering together with our park staff, which has got a lot of opportunity in terms of dovetailing the park and the catering offer. It's only was a few months before obviously we went into lockdown, and so I think we haven't seen the benefits of that quite yet, and it's still bedding in, but I think there's huge opportunities there. So I'll move on to consider the impact of COVID and to share that with members. We closed all our car parks and facilities at the parks on the 22nd of March. However, we were still open for access, walking and cycling. And our staff were still needed to be on site. They were checking play areas. They were making sure that all the facilities were looked after for health and safety reasons as well. But we did furlough some of our staff because they are dependent on income, because their wages are paid for by income. Then our catering and visitor service staff were furloughed. And of course, this is important to offset some of the losses at that time. In terms of the financial forecast, the forecast for 2021 stands at a £2 million net loss, and that's just due to income. There is some increases in expenditure, some of the things that we've had to put in place in order to reopen. And of course, there are some savings because we were shut for some time, so there was some savings. The increase in expenditure is things like increased cleaning, for example, litter collection, etc. I wanted to put this in the context, and perhaps should have put a slide in context of the scale of the service. So our turnover is around £10 million now as a countryside service, now that we have catering in as well. And we receive, or our cash limit from the county council is 2.5 million annually. So I think that gives you an idea of how much reliance there is on income, either through direct charges or through grants such as the agri-environment grants that we benefit from. We are still forecasting a net loss. That's due to reduced capacity, and that's for next year, but that's obviously based on our current information. So we are reviewing that as things change, depending on whether there's local lockdowns or how that capacity changes as well. During the period, we've had 122 staff furloughed, and most of those now are back to work. Obviously, we're considering whether we need to bring casuals back. We've got still 10 of those furloughed. The majority of those staff were in catering function. So it's been a bit of a mixed bag for us, COVID, I have to say. On the good side, we've had an increase of use of the countryside. People have benefited from it. They've loved getting out. And that's been great. So for it, a real appreciation, and I'll show you some details of that appreciation of what we do in terms of offering not just the parks, but also our countryside sites and our rights of way network, which I'm standing in front of here. So people getting out and about and really appreciating the ability to do so has led to some issues, and some of those, for example, around misuse of the countryside, not understanding perhaps some of how you should be using the countryside. So we've had quite a lot of parties going on. The middle picture is a picture of this craze, which is this gas canisters. I think it's like laughing gas. Obviously, that's some people's way of getting through COVID, and slightly easier than picking up needles, I guess. But this is just after a night at one of our parks. We've also seen some people's use of the rights of way network has changed. So there's been an increase in use, and after all, it's there and available for freely use for the public. But it has caused some problems as people have strayed off the paths. They've had picnics, they've wandered around farmyards. Actually, the picture on the with the tent in it is from a private landowner. It's close to a right of way, and that's the only access that's there. They shouldn't be camping, so we've had wild camping. And as a result, some landowners have tried to shut rights of way and make it difficult for people to use them. And of course, that's resulted in complaints from legitimate users as well. So we've had landowners complaining and legitimate users complaining about rights of way. And this isn't new just to Hampshire, it's across the country that this is happening. Huge increase in litter. People not taking their litter home with them, and other things that we've been unable to do in the country. So, for example, I think I sent a note out to all members explaining that we were unable to get our contractors on board for cutting the rights of way this year. So we've had to do that with the staff ourselves, and we've managed to do a good job there. But it has meant that we've had quite a productivity impact, I think, across all the teams as they've been pushed on to dealing with more complaints, clearing up after people, and doing some additional work that normally our contractors would be doing. So yeah, a bit of a mixed bag. We did take the opportunity to work with consultants that actually approached us and to ask us to do if they could do some pro bono work for us. So this didn't cost us anything. And this survey was conducted really to give us an idea, a helpful insight into our customer priorities for returning to the parks, but also an idea of how they were using their local countryside and whether they were going to continue to use it after lockdown. And what I didn't say in here, and which really was astounding, was the fact that we did a 2-week promotion on social media and we had a response of over 2,500. The consultants were expecting to get 500 at the most, so they were very pleased, and we have shared this data nationally as well. We've done presentations nationally to similar organisations to ourselves who've been very grateful for this information. Now, when we did this, we had just opened, so some of those we opened on the 13th of May, so you'll see that's why that's mentioned in there. Some of the things that are important to pull out of here are things that, like, 99% believe that outdoor spaces have a positive impact on mental health and well-being, and that since lockdown, 81% have said this is more important than ever, really. 72% have indicate that the country parks have a large impact on improving their family's quality of life. And also this staycation, so clearly people not expecting to take holiday overseas this year. These are all really important factors, along with really understanding what people needed in order to come back and feel safe coming back to our parks. So full access to toilets and washroom facilities, clear pre-visit information, and making sure that there are extra precautions to ensure their safety were really important to them. What we've done in terms of responding to some of the issues and to some of the information that we've received is we did have a little campaign called #WalkTheRightWay, which is still trending on social media, and that's really encouraging people to share their photos of and providing information on the Rights of Way network and how to use it responsibly. We started this Why Are You Dropping Litter? I don't know if you'd seen the New Zealand one, pictures, they went around, the posters that they use in New Zealand, which other authorities have adopted, which basically says, don't be a tosser. I felt it was a little bit strong, so we changed the wording slightly, and we've produced these posters, which have been very popular, and other authorities have actually contacted us, and we've provided the artwork for other authorities that have contacted us wanting to use the same pictures as well. So they've been really effective, and obviously trying to make the most of the staycation, encouraging people to get away from it all. And what we're trying to do is encourage people to go to these parks and other places at less busy times as well. So, you know, experience the sunrise at Leap, those type of things, rather than come at that peak part of the day between 10 and 2. We're doing a bit more on the staycationing, and also because of that figure of 99% recognising the value of their health and well-being, particularly their mental health, we are starting to work with Mind as well, Solent Mind, and I note that Hampshire Cultural Trust are also doing so. And this builds on a podcast, which if you haven't heard, then I have just finished recording 16 episodes of Looking After Nature, Mindfulness with Joe, available on all platforms, which is a little 5-minute podcast on connecting with nature for your mental health. So I might drop a little link into that for members if you're interested. During lockdown, it was really important that we kept our customers engaged with us. And so we had the Behind the Barn Door campaign working with marketing. This is all supported by our business development colleagues. And we were preparing them to return safely, giving key messages out on social media about what they needed to do, what they needed to bring, what we were doing for them. There is a great video here, which I really wanted to show you, but I did test it this morning and it was not, it didn't come across very well. And I just don't want to ruin this meeting by doing that. So I will send it out in a link to you afterwards, or make sure that it gets sent to you afterwards, if that's okay. It is really worth watching. It's a video that the BBC made whilst we were in lockdown to show that what the farm staff were up to. I wanted to talk a little bit about the strategy that we had to recovery. The first and most important one probably is to just get open as quickly as possible. And we opened probably before many other places did. In fact, people have spoken to me about how quickly we managed to get open, and they followed us and used some of the information and learning that we'd had done to get open. Some places chose to open without toilets, and I think they wished they hadn't, because it led to some rather unpleasantness in the countryside. So we started, our car parks were limited in terms of their capacity to start with, just so that we could enable some of that social distancing to happen. But we swiftly moved to an increase in car parking capacity, as we were finding that it was creating queues, and people were parking close together anyway, but we gave them information on how to park safely. And as you can see, we sort of incrementally opened facilities as we could, in line with government guidance at the time. The sort of final ones to open were our farm attractions, initially opening to members and then opening to tickets only, and now still open tickets only. You can book online, but whether you're a member or not, you can book online. And we are not quite back to 100% capacity, because obviously we need to make sure that there's enough space for people to move around safely. We have quite a lot of concessions that work on at our parks, so we needed to work with them to make sure that their risk assessments were in line with what we were expecting, what our customers were expecting. And then finally, we had our volunteers return as well. We've recently also started opening our indoor catering facilities, and what we're finding is some of the spaces that fortunately we have, for example, I mentioned the Casson Room at Queen Elizabeth Country Park, that's now providing some additional indoor space for catering that we wouldn't otherwise have. However, whilst we've been going forwards, we also need to be aware that we have to go backwards sometimes. So, for example, our barbecue bookings are now starting to drop off again because of the rule of 6, means that those people that have booked groups in to come are now cancelling. So we are having to flex all the time around the new guidance and making sure that we can still have and run our services. Our current position is that the issues in the countryside are reducing slightly with the cooler weather, shorter days. That we're continuing to open up our indoor catering. We opened QE indoor last week, Titchfield last week as well. We've had other things, so for example, the VAT changes that members will be aware of. Well, it took us quite a lot of time. We had to reprogram every till in order to reflect those VAT changes, and I think these are hidden, if you like, costs to COVID or the work that our staff are having to do behind the scenes to make these changes possible. As I mentioned, that we have to work with changing guidance and review our risk assessments. We have hundreds of them, and I know that John Tickle can attest to that because he's had to see a lot of them, and so have I, and sign them all off. And our staff are continuing to try and be creative about how we can carry on with our services and doing the best we can for our customers whilst maintaining their safety. And so things like how to have a socially distant Santa is proving a challenge for us at the moment. And I know that on the canal, for example, they are not able to run their Santa cruises, which is a really important part of their offer and something that brings in around £14,000 for them, but we can't deliver that safely. On the plus side, we are close to budget now on all parking income, so we're only about 3% adrift, considering we were shut for a few months. That's going some, it's really good news for us. However, we are down 80% on admissions and memberships, and our catering is around 50% down. Our second approach is really to make sure that we generate more income where we can through improved facilities and additional activity. And we had there are some new products and activities that have come as a result of COVID. For example, at Royal Victoria Country Park, it was the first driving gig in the south, and we've had a number of gigs there that have been popular and brought people into the park. But what was really important is that we just really carry on with our transformation program, building, and developing the offer in the service and that indoor space as well for people, so that we're coming into the worst weather. We've got some wet weather resilience. So this is really our approach, is just to get on with it, essentially, stand back up those projects and get back to the programme. A few things. It's always good to look at never waste a good crisis. I think that was attributed to Churchill. Somebody will disabuse me if I'm wrong, but there were a few things that we did during the lockdown period that we've learnt from, or some of the changes that we've had to put in that I think are positive for us. So one of the first things we did was we set up a staff register where we could keep track of all our staff and what they were up to, where they were, whether they were available for work, so we had to bring them in to help. We knew that they were available, or whether they were isolating, or what the situation was for them. We stood that down at the end of May, but what we've done is we've learnt from that and now turned it into a volunteer register. And as you can see from this, we have around 851 volunteers registered, and it enables us to keep track of their hours. They have an online sign in and sign out so that we can keep track of where they're working. We know what skills they have, so if we need to try and deploy them elsewhere, we know who's available and what they have, what services they can bring, what they can do for us. And so that's been very well received by volunteers as well, not just us, which is pleased to hear. We've needed to implement table service because of COVID-19 and the way that we need to operate our indoor seating catering, and that's been better both for staff and customers. In fact, it would have been something that would have been quite difficult for us to get staff to do, but because people are much more agile now, they took it on board, and actually they're really enjoying it. And what we're seeing is they're better at upselling as well as a result, which is something we hadn't really appreciated might happen. And as I mentioned earlier, people are clearly appreciating the countryside more, and we are working with our marketing colleagues to make the most of that, including reviewing our memberships and structure, so in terms of what we offer to members and what they get from us. Finally, I wanted to leave you on a bit of a high note, because I think this is not the only compliment we've had, but I thought it illustrated very well all the work that our teams have done in order to make sure that our customers feel confident to come back and visit us. And I think it's the dedication of our staff which has meant that we're really in the best shape that we could be at this point. I'd also like to thank members for being so supportive during this period, because I know things have been difficult with the number of complaints that no doubt you have received through your inboxes as well. So I'd like to also thank you for all your support during this time. And that's
Jo, thank you very much indeed. Extremely full and interesting report, and it's well, always impressive to find out how much has been done at this extremely difficult time. But thank you very much. This is for noting. And I don't know if anybody has any further questions.
Madam Chairman?
Sorry?
Could I make a comment on that presentation?
You may, but keep it short.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First and foremost, just in case it goes anywhere else, leave is spelt with an A, not L-E-V-E on the last slide, Jo. But the most important thing that I found from that is that how important our country parks in particular have been to the public, particularly with this COVID lockdown as such, although people can get out and get into the fresh air. Open space has been so important, doesn't matter where you are. But the most saddening point of all to me, and it's been all over the country, not just here in Hampshire, is when there's been such great volumes of people out everywhere, the amount of litter. It has been on occasions disgusting, quite frankly. And the other interesting thing, because I've experienced in my area, which I hadn't before, which I saw those laughing gas capsules. They were everywhere. To be honest, was out. I must have picked up hundreds and hundreds of them. And I found out, because to be honest, I didn't even know what they were, to be honest. But I find out that they're not even illegal, and yet they cause a lot of antisocial behavior because of it changes the character of the individuals and young people. And it's sad that, I think more emphasis needs to be made of this, because a lot of people don't even know what they are. I'm talking about the public, and parents probably don't know what they are, to be honest. That's all, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Benison. Are you there?
Yes, I am, Chairman. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I've got 2 or 3 quick questions, if I may.
Right, quick.
Quick ones, I know. I think I picked up, Joe, thank you very much for the presentation. I seem to have picked up, you said something about sold some assets earlier on. Refresh my memory. I've forgotten what they were.
Yes, of course.
I've got 3 and
Okay.
then you can run through them. Car park costs. Did I sort of hear that you had put them up? Or you said you were doing 2 different car parking, some for off season and some for that. Perhaps you could expand a little bit on that. And our contractors for next season, it's looking a bit ahead for grass cutting. Have we got it? Are we going to get it sorted if we know what's going to happen next season? Okay, that's all, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benison. So the assets were sold some time ago, mainly. So these were houses that we owned that the rangers lived in, and we decoupled those from the role. There are still a couple of accommodations that we held because of essential farm workers. Otherwise, we'd changed the way that we were doing things like closing the car parks and using contractors to do that and at night, and so we didn't really need people living on site in the same way as we had before. So that's what those were. Yes, the prices have changed slightly with car parking. They've gone up, but what we've done, they went up a few months ago, but what we have done is also introduced an off-peak charging, which we haven't done before. So we've reduced the price for off-peak charging to try and encourage people back into the parks during the quieter months. And we're looking at the contractors. Obviously, a really good opportunity for us to see whether we can make any savings. We can do it differently. What have we learned by doing it ourselves? And is there a different way that means that we can contribute to our T21 savings of £300,000 this for next year? So it's not a straightforward yes or no on the last question, but we will obviously be wanting to get back to ensure that the paths are kept maintained. That's what's important.
Thank you. And now I've got Councillor McCarthy, and that I think is the end, the last one.
Thanks, Chairman. I've also got a couple of very quick questions, Joe. So thanks for that presentation. Really, really interesting. My 2 questions are: one, you said that memberships were down slightly. Can you just expand on why that would be if our parking is holding up? Because are they not related? And the second thing was, I was on my bike on Saturday in the QECP, absolute chock-a-block full of bikes, as is every nice summer's day and autumn day, and when the sun's out. What's the bike hub going to do? What's the plans for that? You put it up and didn't mention it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. So the memberships are down because I think people are not seeing necessarily the benefit of buying memberships. We haven't been pushing it either, to be fair, because we want to review our memberships to make them work harder for us, but also be something that's worth buying from their point of view. So at the moment it's based on the number of visits, so they buy a membership, and obviously it's based sort of on the number of visits, and ours is quite low at the moment, and I think we've got an opportunity to revise how that works. So partly they've been down because the farm attractions weren't open, and then what we did do is extend. So for the period that we were shut, which is 3 months for the farm attractions, we extended their memberships to cover that. I know not every place has done that. If you're a member of other conservation organisations, you'll know that you have no free period. But we have had our customers write to us and say thank you so much for enabling us to give us the 3 months back that you were shut, and we really appreciate that. So I think that was a really good move. But that'll be why the memberships are down, because we've got a 3-month closure as well, hiatus, as well as the fact that we haven't really been pushing them. In fact, the farm attractions have that's where our memberships come in, the farm attractions mainly. We do then pick up on the car parking. That's what happens as a result generally, or admissions, day admissions pick up a bit as a result of that. The second question, the bike hub is one where we will have an ability for people to get the bike serviced. We're looking at bike hire, so it's just an opportunity to have a bit more facility, if you like, for bike users in that area, which we know is really popular.
And will that include electric bikes?
Yes, I think it will include electric bikes, and we're working with the South Wales National Park Authority and others to see if we can get some funding to help make that happen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe, and no recommendation except to note the presentation. And many thanks.
Thank you.
We've got one more item before the work programme, and that is the update on the library opening times consultation. And that, I think, is Emma Noyce will be doing that.
Hello, Councillor Maness. Can you hear me? And can
Yes.
you see the presentation?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we've had a couple of quite thorough presentations this morning, and you have heard a lot from libraries recently. So I will make this fairly brief and go through it at pace, but I'll pause on the bits that I think are most relevant to members. So just to complete the trio of COVID-19 updates that you've heard this morning. COVID, you've heard about the Summer Reading Challenge in the Chairman's announcement. As you know, all libraries are now open for browsing for study and IT use. And as with the Cultural Trust, libraries in Hampshire opened early and they opened fast. So we are pleased that we have managed to open many of our, all of our branches. We are now reviewing that opening and now that we have had a period of understanding how the risk assessments are working, we're now making increases to our opening hours. So you'll have seen Saturdays coming online this month, and also increases to the dwell time, so how long people can spend in branches. We have had the opportunity to launch some new services. So we have been able to offer remote printing, which is where any library member can email their printing to the library service. They get a code and then they go into any library, enter that code into one of our printers and are able to print out that document. And obviously that's really helpful as part of the County Council's COVID recovery with increasing numbers of people working from home. And also we've launched our Spiders app, which means that people can check their accounts, pay fees and charges, and issue and return books themselves via their mobile phones if they don't want to interact with one of our self-service machines. So that's been a really great step forward. We're currently resuming room hire, particularly with our existing hirers at the moment, just on that nod to making sure that we continue to generate income. Our Learning in Libraries offer is up and running, and we've had, I think, 15 courses over the summer term. Those have been incredible hits. They're the first time we've delivered Learning in Libraries online, and those have been selling out, and those also generate grant income for us. Our digital services and our Ready Reads are still performing well. So in terms of digital, the graph just shows the uplift in our digital loans since we moved over to BorrowBox. So you'll see that around about February and March 2020, there was a huge increase, a significant uplift in digital loans from BorrowBox. we were thinking that that might drop off quite quickly after lockdown, but it didn't. It has maintained, and there are some peaks there. Every time we do a promotion, we can see that there's a peak, say, for example, for the Summer Reading Challenge. You've heard the figure that the year before last, our total digital loans were 500,000. Last year, they were 100,000, and that was an incredible achievement for the service. This year, we have just topped over 800,000 loans in the first 6 months. So you can see the trajectory of our digital borrowing. Our social media is equally performing well, and again, we're managing to sustain and increase the engagement we've seen over lockdown. So we're still producing videos, and we've still got our YouTube channel, and our posts are getting a reach of around 2.2 million at peak. Our physical footfall is still down. So our physical footfall is around 20% of what it was last year. Compared with colleagues nationally, that's better than most. So the average is around 15% of what it was last year. And our 20% is increasing, but that does have an associated impact on our income. So we are mindful of that, and we're also mindful of what the next few weeks and months will bring for library services and the operation of libraries. So that's where we are in terms of COVID-19. In terms of our transformation journey, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the post-decision day activity, an update for you on the opening times consultation, and then some information on the staff consultation, which launches today. So the roadmap, as you know well, is that April 2019, we started the transformation journey. We did our major public consultation between January and March. In August, we did our second phase of public consultation on opening times, and we are now in September launching our staff consultation today. In terms of just an update on the post-decision day activity, in terms of press and media coverage, it's been relatively quiet, I have to say. So after decision day, we got a total of 73 items in relation to the decision meeting, and the press office, through their measurements, have deemed 73% of those to be positive or neutral in tone. We had 24 media inquiries, and my kind of observation is that the feedback from the press and the media has been very accurate in terms of what they have reported. And internally, we've had very low levels of customer inquiries or feedback. So I think we've had about 66 comments or letters or emails since decision day, which relatively speaking is low levels of response. Just to let you know what's happening since decision day on the library's proposed foreclosure, we are having discussions with community organisations and parish councils across Hampshire in respect of the 8 libraries listed for closure. In regard to 7 of those 8, we have had approaches. The 8th is Horndean, and we haven't had any expression of interest or conversation around Horndean. But with all the other 7, we've had something. We have sent formal expression of interest forms to all of those who indicated an interest in running the libraries, including in supporting them as community libraries during that first phase of consultation. And we've included a range of groups and organisations in those. The return for those expression of interest forms is at the end of September. And we're also, the team are doing a fantastic job of putting together some very comprehensive details for around the transfer arrangements and developing those. So, for example, the grant criteria for the £10,000 one-off grant that we've indicated would be available, details on the group membership scheme so independent libraries can understand how they can exchange books with Hampshire libraries. And also our property services team have done a great job, and they have been doing condition surveys on the 8 libraries proposed for closure. So that's what this month has been about. So all proceeding well on that front, and I would say very busy as well. And I think thank you to members who are representing those libraries for their engagement with the process. Just a word about the opening times consultation. So you'll remember that on his decision day on the 28th of July, Councillor Woodward allocated the opening hours for each library. So those hours were set. And the August consultation was about how to spend those hours for each library. So what the opening times would be for each individual libraries. So it ran for 2 weeks, and the consultation contained like a proposed set of opening hours for each library, and asked respondents to comment on it. This slide just indicates for you how we got to that point, because it's important that we explain that the consultation in August was not it wasn't standalone. It really did come off the back of the previous consultation. So the first consultation between January and March gave respondents the opportunity to show their preference for how they would want to change opening times, so how they would want those opening times to be reduced. And we ranked those responses, so you can see very clearly that opening libraries later and closing them earlier were very strongly supported amongst respondents. In addition, in that first consultation earlier in the spring, we gave respondents the opportunity to indicate the specific times and specific days when they preferred to visit the library. And we had around about 20,000 responses to this. And this gave us a very clear heat map for every single individual library as to where the preferences from customers were around its opening. So a table like the one on the bottom right was developed for every individual library. And from that table, we drew up the proposals for new opening times. So we really did look at what customers were saying when the customers were saying they wanted to visit, taking into account the preferences for reducing hours indicated above. At the end of that consultation, we had, so a 2-week consultation, we had around 4,500 responses from over 3,000 people. And the reason is because some people responded on behalf of more than one library. Overall, 72% of people felt that their needs were met by the new hours. So a very strongly positive response in that sense. So 35% of respondents were content with the new hours. 37 said that the new hours would not necessarily be their preference, but they would meet their needs. And that's, of course, to recognise that obviously many of our customers didn't want opening hours to reduce at all, but we did need to understand whether the new hours would meet their needs. And only 28% on average said that the new times did not meet their needs. So that was the results. We also had a number of free text comments as well. In terms of the outcomes of that consultation, because of the greater numbers of people whose needs were met compared to those whose weren't, we did exercise significant caution in making any changes, particularly when it got down to individual libraries and the difference between 100 people were happy and 30 people weren't. So we did look very carefully at making changes to make sure that we didn't adversely or we didn't disadvantage people who were happy with or content with the new hours. What we did, we also assessed responses where dissatisfaction was higher than that 20%, specifically went into those responses where dissatisfaction was higher than that 20% and 28% average, and looked at those very individually to unpick what people were saying. So we did consider a number of changes but discount them. So in terms of evening opening, whilst we did have a number of comments in the second consultation about evening opening hours, there were few comments compared to the large number of people, so about 11,000 people in the first consultation who actually said closing at 5 p.m. would be their preference, either first or second preference. We did give consideration to later evening or to some limited evening opening hours, but due to the low levels of support and actually the low levels of actual use, when we go into the numbers of who uses libraries in the evening, numbers are very low, and we felt that by opening evenings, we'd be taking hours away from other times of the day which were more busier and more popular. So we decided to make no change with evening opening hours. The same goes for Winchester Discovery Centre. There were some comments around Winchester Discovery Centre around the Sunday closure. So Winchester is one of only 2 libraries in the county that opens on a Sunday at the moment. It opens for 4.5 hours. We did get some comments about people unhappy with the Sunday closure. What we then looked at is what their preference was, and there was a degree of preference for closing all day Wednesday instead of Sunday. And we looked at that, and again we looked at the numbers, and Wednesday is a much busier day than Sunday, and we felt that for the relatively small number of people who expressed dissatisfaction with the Sunday closure, that outweighed the number of people who are actually content with that position and who use the branch on the Wednesdays. But with regard to Winchester, I do just want to echo what Paul Sapwell said in his presentation about the Cultural Trust. both Hampshire Libraries and Hampshire Cultural Trust recognise that there's a great deal of synergy between the two organisations. We're both working towards very similar outcomes through our different means, and we recognise that Winchester Discovery Centre particularly is a venue which offers us the opportunity to work in a very different way together and much more closely. So we are working very closely and having some very constructive conversations about how we can work in Winchester Discovery Centre differently to maximise the potential of that building. Finally, in terms of the other changes, there were some branches where people were unhappy with the day that was identified for closure, but that generally only had minority support, and the number of people that were unhappy with that specific day, again, were outranked by the number of people that were content with the proposals. Where we did revise proposals, we had some representations around Alresford, Bishop's Waltham and West End to say that there was too heavy a skew for opening in the morning, and actually people would prefer some afternoon opening or a better balance. So what we've done is we've moved some half-day closures in those branches from morning to afternoon to enable particularly families with school-aged children to use the branches in the afternoon. So those decisions were delegated from Councillor Woodward, the executive member, to Chief Officer decision in consultation with the executive member. So those decisions have been made and will be publicised from this meeting onwards. So this is the presenting it today, but then the press will go out throughout the week. In terms of the next phase on the transformation, just wanted to talk to you briefly about the staff consultation. You have seen similar diagrams to these before, but not quite presented in the same way. The diagram on the left shows the overall programme target of 1.76 million and how that is made up. Now, usually when we present, I show you this as the breakup by work streams or by programme themes. However, this version shows you the breakdown between different budget lines. So of the 1.76, 1.38 is derived from staff savings. £142,000 comes from savings from closure of libraries exclusive of staff. So, for example, utilities, business rates, that kind of thing. 11,000 from community library non-staff savings. 146,000 from efficiencies and 88,000 from early achievement non-staff. The diagram on the right breaks down that 1.38 million into where this comes from in terms of staff savings. And I know previously when we've talked to you and in the decision day report, we've talked about the number of redundancies particularly, and I know members have been very mindful of protecting the well-being and welfare of our staff throughout that process. In terms of the staff savings, as you will remember, between in the financial year 1920, we generated £152,000 from staff saving early achievement. 2021, 213,000, and that's all from very, very careful management of the budget and management of vacancies. And when a vacancy comes up, scrutinising every single one to ask ourselves whether we truly need it, because we are mindful of this process and the longer transformation target. We also have only been recruiting people on fixed-term contracts, and our fixed-term colleagues are very important and valued members of our staff, but clearly they are on fixed-term contracts, so we will be ending those fixed-term contracts. That generates £583,000 in savings. The remainder is £430,000, and that comes from the redundancy process that we are now going through. We are able to offer an enhanced voluntary redundancy package. What that looks like in terms of numbers is 18.5 redundancies, which could represent about 30 individuals, given that many of the staff in the library service are on part-time contracts. That is far fewer than we originally anticipated might be the case in the run-up to the consultation, because of all the vacancy management and the fixed-term contract ending that we've been able to achieve. So it's a less significant impact in terms of redundancies than we had originally planned, and it's not the worst case scenario. And we have no doubt that because the library service hasn't actually offered an enhanced voluntary redundancy package in some time, we have no doubt that there will be, we're hoping that we will not have to make any compulsory redundancies at the end of that process. And just for members' benefit, the estimated cost of those redundancies is around £300,000 in terms of payments, which gives us a payback period of just over 7 months, and the business case for that has been approved. Just so you're aware of the timeline, last Thursday, on the 17th, we consulted with our trade union colleagues. That formally commenced that part of the consultation. Our staff consultation commenced this morning at 10 o'clock this morning, and that's a 45-day consultation. Within that consultation, there's a voluntary redundancy window and a preference exercise. So as well as reducing the total number of roles, we're also making a number of changes to rotas and working hours, and therefore colleagues in the library service are asked to express preference for the shift patterns that they would like in the future. At the end of November, the consultation outcomes will be confirmed, and the applications for voluntary redundancy will be confirmed. And then throughout December, we will be confirming appointments to the new structure. You'll be aware that the implementation date of the transformation programme more widely is the 1st of January in terms of opening hour changes and closures to branches. And throughout January, we'll be holding the formal voluntary redundancy and compulsory redundancy dismissal meetings. We then have a redeployment period, and the staff changes will be fully in place by the end of April. So just as a kind of roundup then, the next 6 months and what they look like. In terms of our ongoing service recovery and restoration, bearing in mind the changes over the coming weeks and months, our plan is that we gradually start recovering group activities in clubs within safe guidelines, and we understand that things like story time are not affected by the rule of 6 as long as distancing is in place. So we'll look at safely bringing those activities back. We're very keen to make sure that we bring back income streams. So library fines will be resumed on the 12th of October, and other charges are in place. We are really keen on the development of new opportunities, so new partnerships and looking at new areas for support. So, for example, what I've mentioned about Winchester Discovery Centre, or in terms of opportunities rising, for example, the potential relocation of Eastleigh Library, which is, I know, one that members have talked about in the past, and working with our Borough Council colleagues to look at what's happening there. We're looking at the ongoing development of our digital offer. We don't plan to stop that anytime soon, and we're looking at how we balance now the digital versus the physical offer, and do that in a way that is agile enough to account for any future lockdown situations or restrictions on activity. And we're working nationally to look at the opportunities that libraries present to support wider economic recovery and community recovery. So, for example, digital and back to work skills, using our Go Online computers for job applications and job clubs, and even making space in library available for online job interviews for people who don't have those facilities at home. Those are the sorts of things we're now looking at in terms of how libraries support wider recovery. Our changes to opening hours to bring them back in line with what executive member decision of the 28th of July will be in place by the 1st of January, and we will continue that support for that transition to that independent model by the 1st of April. We also expect our transition of our community libraries to be complete by the 1st of April. The focus very much at the moment is on the successful delivery of the staff consultation, the current consultation for staff, and more generally income generating activity and cost reduction across the service. And all together with that, we also bear in mind that we do have our wider vision for libraries in Hampshire, and making sure that we are actually developing that delivery plan for not losing sight of our wider vision, looking at new delivery models, so getting out and about into communities that need us most, and how we really deliver on that and work with other services, particularly public health and adults health and care and children's services. So that's where we are at the moment. A whistle-stop tour through libraries. I shall ask if members have any questions.
Are there any questions? Oh, yes, I have one. Councillor Hiscock.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. It's really interesting. It's good to know that you are thinking about other uses for the libraries, but I was wondering whether you had any thoughts about, not specifically Winchester, although I'll come to that in a minute, about the use of the now redundant space that's going to be in a lot of the libraries are going to be on even shorter hours. There's going to be a lot of stuff there which could be used, a lot of community facility that could be encouraged to use that space when it's not being used by the library.
Absolutely. Did you want me to answer that now, or did you have a?
No, if you could answer that now.
Yeah, absolutely. We've always been absolutely clear that we, throughout the consultation, that we view libraries as public assets, and whilst they're not staffed, they are very welcome to be opened by the community for other uses or available for community hire. So, for example, through post-lockdown, what we've encountered is a number of organisations who want to carry on having direct meetings, but have not got the space themselves to make their venues COVID secure. Their meeting rooms are simply too small. And we see that with the investment that has been made in libraries in recent years, making sure that we've got mobile shelving units, that kind of thing, that shelving can be pushed to the side and libraries can be used by other services. So, for example, at the moment, we're talking to the youth offending team and the criminal justice services, because a lot of their activity would be outside of library opening hours. So some of the meetings in terms of some of the parole meetings, that kind of thing, outside of hours, and the youth offending teams and other public health and adult services colleagues as well, wanting to make sure that they can deliver sessions in COVID secure premises. So we certainly see that libraries can be used for the wider benefit of the public sector.
Thank you. The other thing is it's really about the response you had to the second consultation about hours.
Yeah.
Is it possible to have breakdowns? You don't want to share it with everybody, but with people who's in the area. I'd be interested to know what the response was for Winchester from people, if I'm particularly about the days and the earlier closing at 5 o'clock. So and will you be sharing that presentation with members as well?
Yes, we will. We couldn't share it. Obviously, we couldn't put it public because it was the staff consultation slides that launched today, but we are very happy to share that after the meeting.
Fine. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chair.
And now I have Councillor Dowden.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Emma, this question is to you, obviously. The decision has been made, obviously, with the community libraries and North Baddesley in particular. I'm obviously very concerned because it's within my division. And presently, they're only opening now 2 mornings a week for 2 hours, mainly for returning books and whatever. I have to tell you, and Sean Woodward, because he's listening now, people in North Baddesley are very, very disappointed, actually. And because for almost 8 years, they were encouraged to bring about a community library, and they did an exceptional amount of work. They really did. And for the sake of the savings, because that is, I know that from the 1st of April, there's the opportunity to seek a grant, but that's for 1 year only. And a lot of these volunteers, because a lot of them are old as well as young, are feeling, and they've spoken to me, saying, what's the point for another year? We're giving our time voluntary, and then we have to spend our time trying to raise that money every year from then on. And as you're well aware, businesses at the moment are struggling in any case, so there's very unlikely any local businesses will be in a position to give money. So I on a personal level, I'm very disappointed with that previous decision, and I just wanted to make that comment, quite frankly.
Thank you, Councillor Dowden. Yes, we do appreciate your comment and the position of North Baddesley Library amongst the others. We are working with them very closely on their transition, and I think there's they are already they have proved how well they can work in terms of covering their property costs and their other outgoings. So we are confident that we can work with them to transition them successfully. But I understand that for many it's a difficult situation.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you very much indeed, Emma, and everyone else. And again, this is just to note the update presentation. And that brings me on to the work programme. Sorry, I just got to find out. I'm trying to work with 3 computers at the moment. Oops. For the next meeting, the only thing on the agenda is Energize Me. And I have, because we've had a very busy morning this morning, 2 very long reports, and then the update on the library service, equally important. And Energize Me, that probably will be quite a long update as well. But I had a discussion with officers, and there isn't. We've got. Otherwise, the following meeting is on the 12th of January. We've got 2 things. The real question is whether we have the next meeting with 1 big presentation. There will be updates, I'm sure. The staff's consultation for the library service will still be running, so that won't really be possible to have then. Any thoughts from members? Is there anything anyone would like to add to the work programme?
So
Madam Chairman.
Oh, go on.
We have acquired the coroner's service under this portfolio now. And as my memory serves me, we haven't had any introduction or anything from them at all as yet. They've probably had a very busy time, and it might be quite nice to hear, to get a briefing as to how the service operates and what's going on with it.
Thank you. I see Felicity Rowe has put her hand up. Felicity.
Hello. Just to update on that, we still have to do some formalities around the governance of the select committee of the services that have moved across to Councillor Woodward's portfolio, and I'm hoping that they will go through full council at the next meeting. If they do, we can then start bringing reports on them to this select committee, but at the moment they still reside under the PNR select. So that's the technical hitch around governance, I'm afraid, but they are on the agenda to sort that out and bring them to you in due course.
So that could be added depending on what happens at the next council meeting, which I would certainly be very interested in. Any other comments?
No, Chairman, you seem to be sort of intimating that perhaps we don't have a meeting on the 30th.
Well, it's really a question. I think we probably should, because I see we've got the January meeting certainly has 2. We've got the.
Well, we have the budget, don't we?
Exactly. That's quite a big one.
Will be quite a big issue. And Felicity doesn't think that if it should go ahead after the coroner's, if it goes ahead after full council meeting this week, she wouldn't be able to get a briefing together for November. Is that too tight?
Sorry, when I said full council, it's not this coming full council. It would be the one in early December. I'm sorry. I would just say January. I wouldn't anticipate that budget report being particularly big or enormous because it's a steady state. That all the decisions have been made for the 2021 budget. So I don't think that meeting, I mean, we'll obviously go through the normal budget presentation, but I wouldn't anticipate a huge amount of input because the budget will be very much what it is, what's already been decided.
So actually, I think, I mean, it really does depend on what members would like.
So what about if we didn't have a meeting in November and we moved the Energize Me to January?
Yeah.
And then we had an update from the coroners. Sorry, when is the next full council? Did you say December?
Yes, December.
Could we then have an update in March for the coroners?
I think what we could do if you is then schedule the the various bits that come across to you for sort of general updates through there, because there'll be others as well, including registration. So yes, we can then set a little program there for the spring around various updates.
So that looks as if we could not have the November meeting, and who knows, we might be able to meet in person in January, but I'm not. That may be over optimistic.
I think so, Chairman.
I'm afraid so. So has everyone agreed?
I'm happy with that, Chairman.
Is everyone happy with that?
I agree. Yes, happy with that. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for coming, and I'm sorry we've overrun, but I think we did have some, I suppose it's a sort of byproduct of the COVID crisis. There's an awful lot to hear about. Thank you very much indeed for coming, for all the various reports and everyone's contribution. Many thanks.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.